Hello everyone, I am Sanjay Kumar, an assistant professor in the Department of Economics at Patna University. Today, I will be discussing the economic crisis and the various theories related to it. After the conclusion of the 17th BRICS summit in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, on 7th of July, Donald Trump threatened to impose a 10% tariff on BRICS nations. Earlier on February 1st, he had already imposed a 100% tariff on various countries, citing the protection of the American economy. How should we understand this phenomenon? Is it simply a reflection of Trump's personal whims? Or is it rooted in a deeper crisis within the American and global economies? A similar situation occurred during the 1930s when many countries imposed tariffs on imports from one another. However, this only worsened the global situation. Ultimately, that crisis was resolved through a devastating world war. Let us try to understand the current scenario in historical context. First of all, what do we mean by an economic crisis? In economic terms, it is called a recession. Then what is a recession? When the growth rate of world GDP falls below 3% per annum, it is classified as a recession. Now the key question arises, what causes such a crisis? In economics, there are three major approaches to understanding this phenomenon. First, classical economics approach. Second, Marxist economics approach. And third, Keynesian economics approach. Now let us come to classical economists approach. Classical economists believed that under laissez-faire capitalism, crisis of production wouldn't occur. David Ricardo introduced the theory of diminishing returns, but he didn't develop a comprehensive theory of economic crisis. The most well-known assertion from this school is J.B. Sage's laws of market, which states supply creates its own demand. But what is the meaning of supply creates its own demand? According to this view, the total input cost of production is always equal to the total value of output, leaving no room for overproduction or underconsumption. Therefore, they denied the possibility of general economic crisis. Marx criticized the views of J.B. Say and called him a vulgar economist. He argued that Say's theory is only applicable to a barter economy. According to Marx, money had evolved into a medium of accumulation and therefore Say's views were no longer valid. However, toward the end of the 19th century, the world economy began to experience real crisis. Friedrich Engels argued that economic crises are inherent to the capitalist system. He explained the recurring patterns of booms and slumps as part of a periodic cycle of crisis. With the rise of monopoly capitalism, Engels believed the system had entered a phase of permanent crisis, where nearly every sector of the economy was affected simultaneously. In the early 20th century, Lenin interpreted the crisis as a result of imperialism, calling it the highest stage of capitalism. He believed such crisis could ultimately be resolved only through war. Lenin was proven right. The crisis of the world economy during the 1930s was resolved through a world war. What was the Keynesian approach? In the 1930s, the world witnessed the Great Depression, a deep and prolonged economic collapse. In response, John Maynard Keynes proposed a radically new theory. He argued that the crisis was caused by overproduction and a lack of effective demand. To overcome the depression, Keynes recommended increasing public expenditure to stimulate demand, thereby reviving production and employment. Keynesians believe that crises are due to deficient demand and advocate for government intervention to boost consumption and investment. But what is the difference between the Marxist and Keynesian approaches to the economic crisis? Marxists believe that the primary cause of economic crisis lies in the changing organic composition of capital, where capital increasingly replaces labor. This leads to a decline in the rate of profit over time, ultimately resulting in crisis. In contrast, Keynesians argue that the main cause of economic crisis is overproduction and insufficient effective demand. When aggregate demand falls short, it leads to unemployment and underutilization of the resources, triggering a crisis. But after the Second World War, the global economy recovered for a time. However, by the 1970s, it was once again facing a severe crisis. The world economy was suffering from both high unemployment and high inflation at the same time, a condition known as stagflation. This phenomenon challenged both Keynesian and classical theories, paving the way for the rise of neoliberal economic policies in the decades that followed. Milton Friedman introduced a new approach that reasserted the views of classical economists. He argued that economic crisis could be resolved through the proper use of monetary policy tools. Since the 1970s, monetary tools have become increasingly prominent in the managing and stabilizing economies. But the crisis of the world economy still persists. Trump's tariff war is merely a reflection of this deeper phenomenon. Without changing the mode of production, it is impossible to resolve this crisis within capitalism, as the contradiction between the social nature of production and the private ownership of its produce continues to give rise to such crises. Without resolving this contradiction, the crisis of capitalism cannot be overcome. We can now say that crisis is a fundamental feature of the capitalist mode of production, and without changing the nature of this production, it cannot be resolved. I think we have now a deeper understanding of economic crisis. Thank you for watching my video.